Welcome back.
So there are a number of states that we are not able to call yet, and we're waiting for some big calls momentarily. We're still looking at some of these Senate races. We're still looking at Milwaukee, of course. We're waiting for Pennsylvania, Michigan, a number of these big battleground states.
Wisconsin as well. Pennsylvania, a lot of raw vote total coming in. As you take a look at this board, you can also look out in Arizona, where it is very tight early. It's about half in. Georgia now seems like it's getting close to being baked here. 93% in, 50.8, 83% in Pennsylvania. Bill, you want to chat about Pennsylvania?
Yeah, we can here. What I set up for you, Brett, is what the night's all about, right? How do you get to 270? And if you punch around on the map and just see the margins, I'm just going to do something, okay? I'm not getting ahead of anything here. But I want to tell you, as it stands right now, if you were to call this entire thing, okay? You know, Harris at 216, Trump at 232. And, you know, if I know you're going to make a call because it's midnight on the East Coast.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Come back. It is Wednesday in New York. Time flies. Polls just closed in Hawaii. The Fox News decision desk can now project that Vice President Harris will win the state of Hawaii. The Aloha State has voted for the Democrat in every election since 1984. This was no different.
And the Fox News decision desk believes that Vice President Harris will win Nebraska's 2nd district, the area around Omaha. Not a big surprise there either.
Not, but as you see the 270, we're at 232 to 216 with these big races still pending. The path is getting narrower for Vice President Harris. Fox News can also project that Hawaii's Democratic Senator Mazie Hirono will win a 3rd term. And the balance of power, as we just said, the U.S. Senate will go to Republican control. So far, 51-43. But again, you see those white blocks there. We could see some more Senate races continue to fall the Republicans' way. Okay. So rudely interrupted, Bill Hemmer, by midnight, ticking down. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, that's all good. I just want to show you, based on where we stand right now, if you were to call the game, okay, Trump's at 232. He just widened his lead in Pennsylvania by 4. It's still not enough. In Georgia right now, his lead went from 2.7 to 2.2. We'll check back in a moment and see where that is. If you were to hang on in Georgia, 267, still not enough. I was looking at Michigan a moment ago. He was up almost 5 points in Michigan, okay? If it stays that way, it's his. And he's back in the Oval Office. If Wisconsin stays where it is, and I just checked the number, he would run it up to 292. And if Arizona, he was up 0.1 percentage points about 30 minutes ago. He's up 0.4 now, so he's increasing his margin. Almost half of the vote out there. Arizona counts slow. It's okay. We'll take our time on that, all right? It would be 303. So that's where we are, and we can run through all the other states, and I'll show you what I'm seeing there. But Georgia has not yet been called here. But here's the margin, 2.3 now, okay? So it popped up 1/10 of a percentage point. Let's go through them. Pennsylvania, yet again, all right? It was 4. It's now down to 3.7. Watch Philadelphia. There's still some outstanding vote there as well. Let's come over to Michigan. I said it was 5. What is it right now? It is exactly 5.0. And while we have you guys, let's do 2 more. Wisconsin, where does it stand right now at midnight on the East Coast? 3.9 now in Wisconsin. I see a lot of red on this map, guys, a lot of red. Normally you see a little more trickles of blue there. Now Arizona in the Southwest, as of now, okay, that's where it is. 0.4 percentage points, a Trump lead in Arizona. You got about half the vote in right now, estimated. Too soon to call, so that's where we are. We'll see if we get a call in a moment here on some of the other stuff.
You know, more and more as the night goes on, Sean Hannity and that T-shirt seems a far distant thing. We could be looking at a real tilt here, something that goes a long way. Not only the coattails, we don't know about the House, but the Senate, and we could be looking at something that is historic.
Which means that, right, based on what Bill is describing here, there's a lot better chance that he runs all 3 of those states than there is that Vice President Harris does. Right. Which shows you, just illustrates how long the odds are now for her. I mean, you know, it could happen. She could do it.
It could happen
based on our calls.
If it did happen, it would look something like
it's a long shot.
1980. I mean, it would be Yep. You would be in landslide territory.
No, yeah,
If-
yeah, no, it would be.
He ends up taking all
And of course,
these
that's how the Electoral College
battleground
was
states.
designed, to take small margins and turn them into Electoral College landslides to make the outcome convincing.
But it's an if.
Well, of
The
course,
blue
it is.
wall
Yeah.
not only has cracks, it has a lot of breakage on the inside, on the side. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening here. Let's check in with Aisha Hasni at Trump campaign headquarters. That has to be getting kind of fired up.
Yeah, really fired up. Really exciting mood here. A lot of moving parts right now. So behind me, bigger crowd now, and that's because a lot of folks from Mar-a-Lago who were partying over with the former president are now starting to trickle in. We just saw Senator Mark Rubio a few moments ago. I just saw a TikTok video of the former president walking around his celebration party in Mar-a-Lago. I don't know what time that was taken, but he looked to be in a very good mood. I'm told by folks in Mar-a-Lago that the mood is very positive. And I also know now that House Speaker Mike Johnson, who was in Shreveport, Louisiana, at his own party, is now on a plane en route to Mar-a-Lago to come here and celebrate with the former president. So all around, all the signs are indicating that there's going to be a victory celebration here tonight, here shortly. All eyes on Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania. That is the only state that anybody here wants to talk about. That's what they're waiting for to be called, and that's when this place is going to get lit, guys. Back to you.
As they say. I hear they say that.
They do say that.
They do.
The kids
Okay.
say that. All right, let's go to Jackie Heinrich, who is at the Harris campaign headquarters in Washington. And Jackie, we spoke about your reporting just a short time ago of some pretty dour moods of at least 3 people very close to Vice President Harris.
Yes, and there were some more colorful words than that even that I wouldn't ever dare send over email. But overall, the sense that I'm getting from multiple people close to the campaign and close to the vice president is that the vibes are very bad. Those 3 sources believe that her path is narrowing so much that it would be very difficult to overcome. Right now, the campaign, though, is still maintaining that none of her paths to 270 have closed, even when I pushed them on the North Carolina race call and said, you know, can you update that? And they said, just as Jen O'Malley Dillon said, the clearest path is the blue wall. So a lot of sort of distance between the messaging from the campaign and what we are seeing from the inside of the operation, just from sources that we were speaking to. The exit polls that they have been watching, they're saying are accurate, and she would need to outperform, really turn things around, and what's coming in is not showing that that is likely or possible. One of those sources put it the most bluntly, saying, I think that we're losing this. Right now, the crowd is thinning out a little bit, but at the same time, we haven't gotten any updates officially on who to expect here, when to expect them here. There hasn't been any messaging to the people waiting out here about who might be greeting them later that would be blocking us. But see, there's this big gap in the grass over there. This was filled with people dancing just a short while ago, and it's kind of empty now. There are a couple different stages here, and we were actually told earlier in the night that the reason that there were 2 stages is because there was a remote location where a studio where Harris could potentially go and potentially pipe video in if the race was still outstanding, if enough of these states were remaining uncalled and needed to go into another day. But it doesn't sound like that is going to be utilized tonight, because we're hearing word that she could be coming here to say something. But who knows who's going to be around for it? We also don't know who this. Go ahead.
No, we hear a new addition in the background, and there may be a new addition to make here in a call that we're having in a few minutes. I just wanted to try to do that, if I could make that transition.
Really well done.
It didn't really work.
Jackie doesn't know who
Didn't really work that well.
Jackie's too young.
Jackie was spellbound by that one. Sorry about that. Let's bring in our panel. Mark Thiessen, Trey Gowdy, Kellyanne Conway join us, and then we have the chain gang over here on the right, chained to the desk, and they haven't left. Okay, Mark, you haven't been on. What's your thoughts?
So when I interviewed Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago the day after the second assassination attempt, we were talking about the previous election, and I pointed out that 2020 was decided by a handful of swing voters in a handful of swing states, and that this election probably would be as well. And he said to me, maybe, or maybe a lot. I have a feeling it might be a lot. Looks like he might have been right. If it turns out the way this seems to be coming, this is the greatest political comeback since 1892 when Grover Cleveland lost the White House and won it back. So what that means is, love him or hate him, Donald Trump isn't just a once-in-a-generation talent, he's a once-in-a-century talent politically. And keep in mind, this is the matchup the Democrats wanted. They thought Trump would be easier to beat. Part of the reason why they launched this campaign of lawfare against him was to rally Republicans around him so that he would be the nominee. And that may have been a grave, grave political miscalculation.
You know, Trey Gowdy, I'm struck by thinking about the strategy on the Trump campaign, right? And that he wanted to do all of these rallies, right? And he dug into that strategy in a big way. Also, he said that immigration, he felt, was a more important topic than the economy, even though the economy kept coming in higher on people's issues lists. And I'm struck, you know, when you look at these cities, Chicago, Miami, all of these places, one of the embedded issues in those cities is the burden that they have had under immigration. So maybe he was right.
No, he was definitely right. I mean, immigration and the border is kind of a microcosm of rule of law, what kind of country we're going to be, whether or not you're going to have to follow the rules. I mean, to take the oath of citizenship, the word law is used 6 times for new citizens. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to break the law and then swear an oath that you're going to follow it. My friend Mark, who knows more about politics than I do, use the word comeback. I think it is really more akin to a political resurrection. If you had asked me on January the 7th, or after the 4th of the 4 indictments, I would have told you I see no way that he'll be the nominee or the president. And now it looks like, look, Sean may be right. Maybe 300 electoral votes. I've been calling my Senate friends. Some of them don't take my call. The others require me to now call them chairman. They will not go by senator anymore. So, I mean, Mike Rogers is up. Yeah. Eric Hovde is up. I mean, it could be a 54-55, which means Trump gets his cabinet. I mean, some of the folks we heard for his cabinet could survive in a 51-49 Senate, but they will be confirmed in a 54-46 Senate.
You know, I talked about the House earlier, Kellyanne, and some races that Democrats outperformed out here in the East Coast. But you would think in this environment with these coattails that maybe they end up hanging on if you get out west to the middle of the country and longer. How do you see that?
That's right. Well, even Chairman Richard Hudson, who's been running the National Republican Congressional Committee this cycle, yesterday said we're going to gain, but it won't be double digits. My own firm has seen somewhere between 3 and 8 seats. We've been projecting 297 electoral votes. We've been projecting, and really just a 53-seat Senate. I mean, 55, 56 would be remarkable. And it also just shows it's not just the blue wall cracking for Trump. It's that these workers, these steel workers, these union households, the Jewish Americans around Philadelphia and Detroit and Pittsburgh, they've just had enough. And this is the time where they're breaking ranks. I think that if he can hold on to the House, Brett, then he really insulates himself from any of these impeachment shenanigans and whatnot. And I got to tell you, if this is as decisive a victory, and we're not there yet, but if it's a decisive victory, then I think the Democrats have to think thrice about this lawfare strategy that they have put on his shoulders like an anvil. They really thought that would get rid of him. No one's been more insulted, investigated, impeached, indicted, convicted, take his name off the buildings, take him out of his family business, take his name off the ballot. You name it, they tried it. Oh, and the assassin's bullets, of course. You name it, they tried it. I would think thrice if I were them. I wonder this, is there a Democrat in the Senate or the House that he can rely upon to help get his agenda through? None of them voted for the Tax Cut and Jobs Act the first time. It's benefited all of their districts in some form or fashion. There's no question.
I mean, maybe, you know, the ones that cited him in commercials may all go down tonight.
Some are losing because they're not authentic. People already know Sherrod Brown is voting with Biden and Harris, as is Bob Casey, 95, 96% of the time. He can't just bear hug Donald Trump when it's politically expedient. One thing I want to point out in the data, the Fox News voter analysis has Harris winning college-educated women, I think, by 10 points. The Real Clear Politics average of polls showed that she was going from 9% to 18%, basically doubling Biden's margin. That's just not coming true tonight. And I think that was her best demographic path to make up these other deficits. We're just not seeing it tonight. And I think it's too much abortion, too much wokeness, not enough inflation, immigration.
You know, the other issue that was really so central, Dana, for her is abortion. And I'm watching these referendums, and a few of them have passed. New York has passed, Maryland passed, Florida did not pass. But what we're seeing is that people seem to be separating it from the rest of the picture and voting their will.
Yeah, and I wonder, I mean, Kellyanne might want to jump onto this as well, but when the voters are telling you since May of 2021 that immigration and inflation, economy are their number one issues, and it's been consistent every single month since then maybe you should listen to them. And when you look at, now for some people, abortion, pro-life or pro-choice is the number one issue if you're a single issue voter. But if you looked at all of the polls that said it was down below, it wasn't their top issue. It was always economy, immigration, crime, sometimes democracy, but down below, abortion, foreign policy, et cetera. So I think that some of these state referendums that worked very well for them in 2022 did not do as well for them in a presidential election.
Britt, it's a realignment. This is a realignment of the Republican Party. There is no doubt. We thought it in 2016. It is now fully implemented in the face of what was, to everybody's point, fascism, Hitler, Nazi, Madison Square Garden, a Puerto Rican comedian that they said was going to move the Puerto Rican vote around the country. This is a major realignment where people could look at all that mass media, all the media covering that one way, and say, I don't believe it. I do not believe that. And I'm going to vote how I want to vote.
And we can go back a number of years into all the false alarms and all the false stories were written about Trump while he was president and date the beginning of this from back in that period in terms of the loss of credibility of mainstream media, loss of credibility for the people who were hurling around terms like Nazi and authoritarian and all the rest of it. The people in the end didn't buy it. I'll also say this. We ought to keep a thought for the Harris people, the Harris campaign people, because they were saddled with the person I think was the weakest presidential candidate I've ever seen. She was absolutely the weakest. And one of the reasons why they didn't do some of the things related to issues that you mentioned, Dana, I think, is that they had a candidate who really couldn't pull it off.
Right.
You know, she didn't have anything to say. Brett, I mean, you had an interview with her, and he came up with one fairly evident question that you asked her that about, you know, when she first figured out that Biden wasn't all there, and she completely booted it. What are you going to do with somebody like that if you're a campaign advisor?
And I wonder
There's a limit to what you can do, don't you think, Martha?
I mean, I wonder what Nancy Pelosi is thinking tonight, and Chuck Schumer, who went over to Biden's residence and said, look, this is over. And Joe Biden is the reason that Kamala Harris is the candidate, because in one posting on social media, he dropped out. In the next one, he said, she's your person. And all talk of a mini primary dissolved right then. Harold, your thoughts on that?
So again, we've not declared any of this, and we want to be careful. It looks as if this is heading in a certain direction. I don't disagree with a lot that has been said. I recall not long after Brett's interview with the vice president, I believe she went on a rival network, and the first question that was asked of her was, "What's the first piece of legislation you'd like to get passed?" And she punted the question, saying she just wanted to be bipartisan. How you don't say border security? How you don't say I want to reach out to Republicans and figure out how if you Roe v. Wade, I want it restored. Something substantive, positive that's consistent with your message or consistent with where the country wants to go. Again, I don't want to write anybody's political obituary here, or presidential race obituary until the race has been declared. But I do hope that if it looks like what's going to happen happens, I do hope everybody can be gracious and magnanimous. There's no doubt this is the greatest political comeback we've seen. I had not heard my friend Mark talk about the 1892 reference. You're likely very right. The political resurrection of my friend Trey Gowdy. I called one of your friends. He said, made me call him Mr. Chairman also this evening. But we have to be gracious in the moment. And I hope, Kelly, and there will be Democrats who will want to reach out to President Trump and reach out to Republicans in the Senate, and we'll see what happens with the House. But again, we haven't declared anything.
No, we haven't. And there is the caveat, but Bill Hemmer, we're waiting on Georgia.
Yep.
right?
Waiting on a lot of things.
And we're waiting on Pennsylvania. We're waiting on
you-
Wisconsin. We're waiting on Michigan.
you
But
can ask.
why Georgia, do you think?
Let me pop on down there. Had a nice little pretty map set up for you guys.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I can come back to it. All right, so here's Georgia. All right, and here is the remaining vote. And what I see is a lot of the vote in Atlanta in the Atlanta metro area is in, but there's fractions here and fractions there. I see Chatham, okay, Savannah. It's not a small county, 5 out of 159. It's got about a third of the votes still remaining as well. We're not quite set up for the vote margin there, but...
All right, go back to Pennsylvania. I just wanted to check
no, it's
in.
okay. No, what I was poking around here a moment ago is Wisconsin. If you do the remaining vote, and the reason we put in these different shades of purple is because the deeper the purple, the more outstanding the vote. The lighter the shade or the gray, that means the county is checked in already. So you see down here in Milwaukee, I mean, a little more than half is reporting in Milwaukee. There's some suggestion that in the middle of the night, 3, 4 a.m., that Milwaukee expects to go ahead and give us the remaining vote. This is Michigan right now. This is the remaining vote out that's outstanding. Look, a lot of this is rural in the Upper Peninsula. A lot of this is rural up here, and a lot of the votes outstanding. But this is Wayne County. This is Detroit. All right, this only 23% of the vote has now been reported. So that's 75% outstanding, right? 75 to 77, somewhere in that range. So a lot of votes in Detroit. So whether or not that's something they can overcome on Harris's side, I do not know. Let's pop out to the Southwest while I got you guys, and let's go here. Okay. Well, this is a change here. 0.7 now, 13,365 for Trump in Arizona. Let me just see this. Okay, you got some rurals out here. Apache, you get a lot of Republican votes up in here. Sorry, excuse me, Mojave. My bad on that. But Maricopa is the big one. 60% of the vote statewide is here in Maricopa. She has a slim lead here, 2.2. That hasn't really moved. And the folks in Arizona told us before the night began that they were going to, it's going to be a process. It's going to take a while, too. But look, if you ask this question to the decision desk, they may tell you one thing. The only thing that I can tell you is that when I poke around in this map, the main population centers in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Philadelphia as well, state of Pennsylvania, are still outstanding as of now.
Well, a lot more to dig into, a lot more calls to make from the data that's coming in. The biggest prize, obviously, that blue wall. Our coverage continues next.
Account.
So we're getting a lot of vote in, but there are still several states that are very important that are still too early to call: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Georgia, states that we've been talking about a lot over recent weeks, and we just want to get all that data in.
So if you put it up on the board, we can show that we are closing in because there is a lead in a lot of these states, and you look at what's left out there. Pennsylvania, 86% in. Michigan's a little early in 52%, and then 80% in Wisconsin. 93% in Georgia. We're going to dig into Georgia in a little bit.
Yep.
And in fact, let's throw it down to Madison Allworth in Atlanta. Madison, why haven't you made a call?
Brett, you know what? I've been getting that question from a lot of folks on the ground here because obviously obviously Fox has not called Georgia as a state, but this crowd, they celebrated at 10:30. That is when GOP chairman of Georgia, McCoon, got on the stage. He called it for Trump here in Georgia. Again, obviously Fox News has not called, but at this party, they very much has. So the party happened at 10:30. They've been cheering on as the other states have been called, but they've been waiting to hear why the Fox News decision desk has not made that decision yet. A lot of things that they're looking at that make them excited. There's certain counties like Baldwin, which is an area that has usually votes pretty Democratic. That's an area that actually is now favoring Trump. It's also predominantly black, and it has 2 universities there. So the fact that that area is going for the former president probably says something about the young black vote and the young vote in general. You probably heard some cheering. That's because they have us up on the screen behind, and they heard us on because the people here, guys, they're waiting for you to make the decision because, like I said, at 10:30, they called it for Trump, but obviously still waiting on Fox News to make that official decision. Brett, Martha?
Yeah, Madison, that area is really come around in recent years because the Harris campaign thought that they had a real shot in Georgia. We haven't called it yet, and there's a reason for that. They're just waiting for other vote to come in. But there's an excitement there that they're finally going to get over the top.
Oh, absolutely. There is an excitement here. And we've been talking to folks on the ground. The fact that Georgia will most likely flip for former President Trump again. They've said things like, enjoy this moment. We worked hard for this. Enjoy the fact that we're bringing safety back to America. They're very happy that their candidate is probably going to take home the win here. And, I've been talking to voters on the ground for days now, and I got a lot of people that said they waited and they took time to make their decision, and ultimately it came out to Trump for them. So a very dedicated voting base here. And in this room, we're at the GOP watch party. Obviously, they're quite excited.
Yeah. All right, Madison, thank you so much. By the way, there hasn't been a lot of count in Georgia in the last 45 minutes or so. So we'll see where that stands.
We'll get a look at that and see where that's going. But what about Tennessee, which we called a really long time ago? I know everyone's wondering what is happening in Tennessee, but Pete Hegseth can answer that question for us because he is in Nashville. Did you hear, Pete, that we called Tennessee?
A while ago.
With 0% of precincts reporting, yes, which I very much appreciate. And so did the crowd here. My kind of state. But I'm telling you, we're having a lot of fun. We're at Kid Rock's in downtown Nashville on Broadway. And behind me, I've got a lot of intelligent, independent women behind me who are really fired up about the outcome tonight. I mean, you guys are like John Madden and Pat Summerall calling a football game. Every call you make, this crowd erupts. And when they erupt, it is based on a call you're making. And it's been fascinating to watch the energy in the room increase as the odds have moved in favor of Trump winning. And we've been talking to voters all night. This is what I love about election night. You guys know this. You've got pundits, you've got polls, and on election night, the people speak. And the people here are watching this may be a bright red state where their vote doesn't necessarily matter in the Electoral College, but they're watching their fellow Americans cast ballots on behalf of a candidate they believe in. So a lot of energy, and I think represents a lot of living rooms where maybe families of 4 or 5 are chanting USA as you guys are bringing in the returns. A lot of hope that the former president will be 47. It's just a matter of when it might be called. So thanks for indulging us here on Fox Nation. We just wrapped our coverage, and you guys are doing a phenomenal job.
Thank you, Pete. There's probably some good music down there, too.
Exactly. Say hi to everybody for us down there.
Maybe not New Edition, but something. Let's bring in our panel. Welcome back, Karl Rove, Jessica Tarloff, and Sandra Smith, and our regulars to the right. Sandra, great job looking into the Fox News voter analysis. What are you looking at?
All right, a few things. We haven't really talked about fracking in Pennsylvania, as we do wait on results to continue to come in there. Views on fracking. This is obviously key in this state, and we know that Kamala Harris flip-flopped on this issue. And so we're looking at how voters responded to that. 62% of Pennsylvania voters say that they favor expanding fracking in that state. Those voters backed Trump by more than 2 to 1. That was important to those voters. We'll see how that turns out. Another big difference, Michigan union voters, that vote is looking about the same with our Fox News voter analysis when we compare it to 2020. What might make the difference for Donald Trump in Michigan, white Catholics. Really interesting, he is at 61% of the vote with white Catholics. Harris is at 37%. Trump won white Catholics by 13 points in 2020. He has run that up to 24-point margin.
Wow.
That's a big difference in Michigan.
Major difference.
That is a big difference.
And you wonder whether she should have gone to that dinner.
To the Al Smith dinner. She may be wondering that tonight. He showed up and gave his speech, and he has had a lot of support, mostly based on the pro-life issue.
And RFK Jr. was cutting ads for the Catholic vote in particular in battleground states.
As far as I
was just going to say, I think when you look at the margins, at least at this moment in Wisconsin and Michigan, I think somewhere in Florida, RFK Jr. may be breathing a sigh of relief because he could have been a spoiler in those, but it looks, at least at this point, like the margin is big enough.
I do think we have to bring up the youth vote again. I mean, what a difference we are seeing from 4 years ago. Those voters under the age of 30 going for Harris over Trump by 8 points. 4 years ago, they favored Biden by 25 points. I mean, this is a huge difference. And we dive in at the state level, you are seeing what a difference that makes where he is outperforming what we saw earlier leading into this in the polls.
And how crazy is that the younger candidate, there was a lot of talk that a younger candidate would draw younger voters, but Joe Biden drew them in a larger numbers than she appears to have.
Carl, you've been on the back end of nights like this. You have been digging into the numbers. What board do you have for us now?
There you go.
Where we began.
one.
It all comes down to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, if it goes for Trump, will settle the contest. It'll be mathematically impossible for her to win.
So as you looked at tonight, what did you see as it unfolded?
As it unfolded, a little bit changed. Earlier in the evening, it looked like he was doing slightly better in the big city urban areas. And in some suburbs, like in Georgia, he was not doing as well. But tonight in Pennsylvania, for example, he's doing better in all four of the southeastern suburban counties, as well as doing better in the rural parts of the state. And it is an unusual coalition. It's inner city ethnics, it's Catholics who have been for decades the principal swing vote in America, increasingly Hispanic voters among them. And he's knit together that coalition tonight, along with working class people in small towns and rural parts of the country.
If I could just add one data point from our FNVA on Pennsylvania on the white Catholics, it looks like Trump is running about 1 point, almost exactly the same as 2020. In fact, Trump's actually down 1 point with the white Catholics in Pennsylvania. So that's about the same. But Union voters, he's also seeing a down arrow there, about 3 points. He's running down below his 2020 levels.
So there's still hope for the blue wall for the Harris campaign. What are you hearing?
That there's still hope. Obviously, I didn't love to see the go take a nap and we'll get back to you in the morning about all of this, but we do have to keep in mind that the race in 2020 wasn't called for days, that Biden won Pennsylvania on Friday of that week and Wisconsin on Thursday, I think that it was. So we'll see. They think it's close, that there's vote coming in. There was some conversation over how much of a remaining vote in Philadelphia existed, and there was an extra 120,000-ish votes that were out there that could go into Harris's column. Two things, though, that I've been thinking about. One, and Dana knows this well, how much I love to throw out a good door-knocking stat, right? So 2,000 door knocks a minute for the Harris campaign. Does any of that stuff matter anymore? And we'll see how this pans out. She could win with the simple route through. She already, getting Nebraska second. But the Harris campaign ran a conventional campaign, right, where raising money, souls to the polls, that kind of stuff matters. Will that be the path going forward? The second thing is, if this night doesn't end up going in Harris's direction, and barring some big change, she will have underperformed Biden in 2020 in every single demographic except college-educated women. And even with college-educated women, it wasn't the overwhelming win that we thought it was going to be, or that was projected in some of these very prominent surveys. And when you think about the fact that there were some people, I didn't think we were going to win Iowa, but that we had seen surveys where he was only up 5 in Kansas or up 3 in Ohio. It's going to take a lot of refocusing to understand really what happened here. And it doesn't seem like it was one decision that the Harris campaign did. I'm sure if she loses Pennsylvania, there'll be a lot of Josh Shapiro discussion. This feels much bigger than any decision about having him on the ticket or going to the Al Smith dinner.
So, Carl, when Jessica just brought up a potential for 150,000 votes in Philadelphia County, I saw your head kind of swing around. Does that not make sense to you?
Well, no. I mean, we're pretty good at saying 89% of the vote is in, or 95% of the vote is in, and that not turning out to be, that turns out to be accurate. It's very rare. I can't imagine in one instance where we've said where we've looked at a number and seen 90% of the vote in or 85% of the vote in, and that turned out to be grossly off. I will say this, though. I do want to follow up on one thing. Think about all that she had to face. This is an abysmal number when it comes to the approval of the sitting president. No party has elected a president when their sitting incumbent had as low a job approval as this president had. Take a look at the right direction, wrong track. I mean, 2/3 of the American people say the country's going in the wrong direction, and she represents the party in power. To me, it's it's amazing that she's come as close as she has, given
the party, the administration.
Yeah, she was the vice president in a very unpopular administration, and yet tonight, again, Britt made the point earlier. The Electoral College will serve the purpose of translating a relatively small difference between these two people. Look at Pennsylvania, 50.9 to 48.1. And yet at the end of the day, a series of victories that are 1 and 2 and 3 points are going to generate a commanding number in the Electoral College that will help the new president again, if it all goes like it looks like it's going, to be more effective in office.
Harold Ford, are there going to be Biden people that say he could have been better? Like Biden?
I think it's hard to make that case for some of the reasons, and I think Britta and Carl have made the point. I think 3 things. I listen to Sandra's data. I'm curious, as we get a day or so away from this, as we look at what happened with the performance amongst women for her. Did she win African American women, Hispanic women, white women at a bigger rate? Were there disparities between the two? And then the race thing for me, I'm going to be curious also to get more. We heard the numbers around Hispanic voters, but even black voters, where that might be. And interestingly, Carl, normally you see a race where in the country where the cultural issues impact, as you were talking about the suburban areas, in some places he wasn't performing, and you see the suburban areas in Pennsylvania and elsewhere where the economic issues, fracking, and the livelihoods of those communities were at stake. Then you have the cultural issues. I think the issue around transgender rights was a bigger issue than Democrats really understand what it meant. I mean, what it meant for girls playing sports. I'm a father of a son and a daughter, what it means if little boys are playing and little girls' sports and going into bathrooms. I don't think they ever we've not gotten our head fully around that issue. So there'll be a lot of reckoning, and to Jessica's point, and I think a lot of reimagining whom we are as a party, which I think will be good for the party if indeed the trend continues where it is this evening.
I'm not going to belabor this point, but for a candidate Democrats who really were aggressive, and a media that echoed that, called him racist and a Nazi, and yet today to see the black vote and the Hispanic vote going exponentially more than it did before is really quite something. I mean, it's just startling, Britt.
Well, it's a further sign of the decline of the influence of the mainstream media, which tends to take its cues, to say the very least, from the Democrats, and to repeat with serious faces the charges he made and the sometimes outlandish claims that he has made about Donald Trump.
We could be getting ready for a call here soon. We're going to stay here, and we're going to go to Bill Hemmer, because you're looking at Pennsylvania, Bill. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, sorry, they were talking to me. Go ahead. What's that?
How come I always talk to you when they're talking to you?
Well, because there's a lot to be said over here.
All
in
right.
this
So
figure. Go
Pennsylvania,
ahead.
we're still looking at, but
Yeah.
we're also looking at the national popular vote,
Yeah.
which he's currently leading.
Yeah. One thing I was looking at here. Okay, this is Philadelphia. This is 2016. This is Trump's margin in Philadelphia, 15.5. Okay. Then he comes back 4 years later. Philadelphia. That's where I mean, it's a Republican running in a blue part of the state. He's just shy of 18. Okay. So where is he tonight? He's almost at 21. Okay. So hold on that moment here. Okay. There's a reason for this.
Wow, that was a nice move.
Yeah, like that? You caught me off guard. So let's go ahead and look at the vote difference for Pennsylvania. Some things I want to show you right now. You know, we talked about this Democratic march over here, and really, when we talk about the blue wall, here's where we stand right now, okay? Got to reach higher than that. Trump's just shy of 3 percentage points, now ticking down to 2.7. That's a live number that continues to come in. Go ahead and clear this. Kevin Wyden out there, Mitt. Let's look at the vote margin for Pennsylvania. I'm going to show you the blue wall and how, if it's moved every direction for the past 3 decades, is it about to move in the same direction yet again? Right? There's 3 counties here in Philadelphia that really tell a story. These are your flipper counties, all right? Look at Northampton. All right? Northampton is above Philadelphia. Trump's leading in Northampton. That flip for Biden, it's flipped back to Trump by about 5 points. Look at the other end of the state in Erie. Erie is one of these bellwethers as well. Kamala Harris has been leading there most of the night, and just about 30 minutes ago, Erie flipped. In Centre County, right smack dab in the middle of that T that you normally get in Pennsylvania, Centre County has always been the exception. It's been blue. That's where Penn State University is located, et cetera. Right? That is another indication about how well Trump has done in Pennsylvania thus far tonight. There's a real good chance he flips all those and maybe more shortly. So I want to show you that. We'll go ahead and clear it and give it back to you guys, okay?
Well, it's really interesting. We've got some action because we're hearing the former president is going to his party in West Palm, but we're also seeing Cedric Richmond in Harris Walz's campaign co-chair speaking at the Harris Watch party. Let's listen.
Votes to count. We still have states that have not been called yet. We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken. So you won't hear from the vice president tonight, but you will hear from her tomorrow. She will be back here tomorrow to address not only the HU family, not only to address her supporters, but to address the nation. So thank you. We believe in you. May God bless you. May God keep you. And go HU and go Harris. Thank you all.
Cedric Richmond, the campaign co-chair, and it's hard to ignore the fact that this is the mirror image of 2016 when John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign chair, came out around the same time of night and said, we're still counting votes and you won't hear from her tonight, you'll hear from her tomorrow.
Which is stunning. Go HU, by the way, is Howard University. That's where the campaign headquarters party is. But the vote is still going. They're not stopping. The counting is still continuing in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Arizona, in Nevada. So, as you start getting to a decision here, and we could be getting close to a decision, we'll see where we are in Georgia. There have been other calls for Georgia. We are now in Michigan. Bill Hemmer, seeing some movement?
Up over 6 points, 6.3 now. The margin's getting larger for Trump here. Raw vote count is 210,000. So if you start doing some math and you think like what's outstanding in Detroit, Wayne County, which is a lot, it's a sizable amount of votes out there. But whether or not there's enough votes in Wayne, once they announce and release, whether or not it's enough to overcome his lead right now.
What about Kent County? He has closed 3 campaigns in Grand Rapids, and he just closed this one there last night.
Kent County has been stubborn for Donald Trump. I think he would probably confess that. This was a flipper from 2020 when Joe Biden took it from the Trump team. Right now in Kent County, she's got a pretty comfortable lead here, about 10 points. It's a remarkable thing when you think about it. The Gerald Ford Museum is there. And we talked about 5 hours ago about the realignment of America in the South, primarily like in North Carolina and Georgia and perhaps parts of Florida. You don't think about a realignment in Michigan necessarily. But this has been an area that Donald Trump wanted to win. There's a reason why he started his tradition in 2016 by concluding his campaign in Kent County, Grand Rapids. He did it again in 2020 in a losing effort. He did it again just this past weekend, Monday night at midnight, right? He rolled into, he rolled into Florida at 5:30 in the morning. That was yesterday morning. No, it wasn't. It was this morning, wasn't it? Right. because it was Wednesday, right? Okay, you follow me on the calendar? Okay, yeah, okay. But it's been stubborn. It appears that it will stick that way as well. Kent County and Grand Rapids will stay in the blue column. It's a changing area, you know, this west coast of Michigan. But what I'm seeing right now, even though you'll have just about 60% of the vote in, I'm seeing a lot of red lining up and down Lake Michigan. And for a while, you know, that had changed. It seemed to be shifting a little bit. There's a county right here called Muskegon, beautiful part of the world. And that had seemed to be drifting in the Democratic column as well. But Trump's got a firm grip on it now, 16 points. And I'll just go west of Muskegon, or sorry, south of Muskegon, west of Grand Rapids, is Ottawa County there. Like for years, this was like a Republican bastion. Trump kept it that way in 2020, winning by 21.5 points. In 2016, in Ottawa specifically, you ran away with it at 30 points. And so it will stay that way tonight. And let me just come out to real-time data here and let you know where we are statewide. You've got some vote out there, but you see this margin here yet again. Just as I'm talking here, guys, it's ticking higher. 210,967, 6.3 percentage point lead in Michigan. I'm not going to say it because it's not my job, but it looks like the blue wall could stay intact yet again for another year where it votes in unison with the winning party who takes the White House that year.
Since 1988, that has held.
I think we're getting ready for a call.
I think we are too. Are we?
Fox News can now project that the state of Georgia will go to former President Donald Trump. This was a really hard-fought battle. If you think about Georgia, loses it last time to President Biden by 11,779 votes. For some reason, that number sticks in my mind. And this is a big win. He went there, campaigned there, and so did Vice President Harris numerous times, thinking that Georgia could stay in the Democratic column.
You know, he had a difficult relationship with Governor Brian Kemp. If you remember, 4 years ago, after losing Georgia, they tried to salvage 2 Senate races in Georgia. A month later, special elections. That didn't go well either. So this is a very big win for former President Trump to, you know, have this redemption in Georgia tonight.
So now we are at Electoral College vote at 248 for Trump and 216 for Harris. We have a panel. We're welcoming in Darren Shaw, a member of the Fox News Decision Desk. Welcome in Juan Williams as well, along with Karl Rove. Darren, we got you out here. We were going to say, what happened? Are we calling Georgia? And then you push the button.
Are you here to tell us that we were right when we said you called Georgia?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I thought you were going to come down here to grill me, and we preempted that.
What else are we going to call?
You guys called Georgia in the nick of time for you, Darren.
That's exactly right.
While we have you, how do you see this night? And was it like you thought going in? And as you look at the blue wall there?
Well, I think 2 things. This is an election. This is unprecedented by my standards because the more data I saw, the more possibilities seemed to unfold. There was stuff a couple weeks ago I didn't think could happen. I didn't think Trump could win, let's say, the national vote. I'm not saying he's going to, but that was something that nobody thought could happen. They thought he was capped at 47, 48%. That's a possibility. We had a lot of conversations about whether these, swing states were going to move together or whether they were going to sort of crack and each move separately. There's a possibility tonight that, I didn't think this would happen earlier in the afternoon, but that he could sweep all of them. That's not a prediction, but it's something that's within the realm of possibility with the data we've seen.
You're saying blue wall turns into a red wall.
It's possible. And that wasn't something anybody was talking about. People talked about Michigan, in particular, as being the toughest state for Trump to crack. Now, Bill's shown the data recently. We've been looking at it for hours. Michigan's looking very difficult for her right now.
All these toss-up states had been within a point or 2. So is there any way to look at what you see now and say this could be a win in a larger percentage than that? I mean, a lot of these states are still close, but...
Right. What we're looking at right now, we have sort of model data, and we're looking to reach a certain level of statistical significance to make a call. We're also looking at what we call the outstanding vote. And so, for instance, in the case of Georgia, we were modeling about 835,000 outstanding votes. A lion's share of them were coming from suburban Atlanta. She needed to hit about 55, 56%. She was getting about 45%. And at a certain level, that becomes a statistical impossibility. The more data you get, the less room she has to actually grow or do better than she's been performing. And so that sort of triggered the call in Georgia. We're not quite there yet in the other states, but this may not be an election where we need to be here till Thursday or Friday.
Right. And so when they say go home, relax, you're saying maybe not yet.
We'll see if they, continue to count. Arizona and Nevada have been particularly stubborn about that. We understand in Nevada they don't allow any counting until the last vote has been cast, which is, we think, why we're getting basically nothing from Nevada so far. Yeah. But Arizona, it's coming in sort of droves. It's a close race there. Wisconsin and Michigan. Michigan seems to be counting there at like 54, 55%. Wisconsin at 2 a.m. in 2020 had counted 99% of the votes. So we think there's a chance we might have enough data in Wisconsin, maybe Michigan. So we may have some resolution more quickly than we had thought.
So in Pennsylvania, Sean talked about this earlier, the early vote and what that looked like and what she would have to do day of in Philadelphia and those counties right around there. Is it possible that that's still out there and it's possible to do?
Well, it seems to be a probability diminishing by the hour. I think this is something from the Georgia data, but we've also seen it in Pennsylvania. Young African-American men did not come home. Part of the African-American vote came home to her, but a lot of it didn't, and there's a gender gap there. And the Georgia, I think, I have to run the numbers, and I'm not going to lay this at the feet of any demographic group in particular, but she really did seem to underachieve amongst African-American males, especially young African-American males.
I mean, it just makes me think about Michelle Obama and Barack Obama, the former president, and the very strong appeals that they made. Michelle Obama said, don't let your husband or boyfriend's rage dictate your vote. President Obama talked about bringing out the brothers and scolding them. That does not seem to have been a strategy that worked.
Darren, did the Fox News voter analysis track with what you saw with raw vote as you went around the states? Yes.
There were a couple. What we're doing early on is we get this early vote from Indiana and Kentucky. It allows us to kind of figure out, is the FNVA performing consistent with the data? There were a couple states where Trump overperformed a bit. Florida was one. We were a little concerned that we might be overestimating Trump's performance in rural areas. But the more data we got, the more that didn't seem to be the case. It seemed like he was basically hitting what we thought he would hit.
We've got the brain here. Did anybody else have a question for Darren? Brad?
I'm curious about immigration and what you've seen in terms of how much that played into the votes in some of these states.
Well, I think the one thing we can say is that it didn't repel people. In particular, there was some talk about the Hispanic vote coming home over the issue of immigration. That did not seem to happen much at all. The FNVA suggested, I think it was 40% was Trump's performance amongst Latinos. That ended up being, I think, within 13 or 14 points of Harris's. I mean, if you showed me data before the election and said, that he's going to get 15% of the African-American vote, 40% of the Hispanic vote, I'd say that's an awfully tough night for a Democrat to win an election in.
There's some reporting that Trump has won Erie County, Pennsylvania. Is that square with anything you understand?
I think it was on sort of a knife's edge. I don't know if Bill's got the latest data, but
it was a what we go here.
It's part of her hope, right?
Went back to the Trump team, and right now, currently, just to keep you guys up to date, he leads it by a point in 1.4, which is a little less than 2,000 raw votes.
And it's 99%
left out. How much?
Yeah.
It's 99% in, or 90? What did you say?
90.
99%.
Statewide, 90%. Darren, I got a question for you. When you think about the blue wall in the upper Midwest, when we were at the convention in Milwaukee in July, it ended on a Thursday. On a Friday, we had that national computer glitch, and all the airports were shut down. So all the delegates and all the journalists and all the campaign folks were stranded at the airport in Milwaukee. And I was still thinking at the time about, why did I just see Kid Rock? And why did I see Hulk Hogan? And why did I see Dana White? And I went to the campaign and I said, what's going on there? Because it was men. It was white men. And they said, we notice in the upper Midwest, at the time they were thinking about Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio to a lesser degree, and Pennsylvania. That's what they were thinking about. And they said, we noticed that there was a certain percentage of white men who voted in 2016. They sat out 2020, and we're trying to win them back. Is there evidence that those white males in those upper Midwest states did that tonight?
There was sort of a rule of thumb we were adopting that, and we spoke about this a little bit earlier in conversation with y'all, but that, the gender gap is a double-edged sword. Gender gap can help or hurt depending upon, the absolute level of support. We were looking at 55%. In other words, if Trump was hitting 55% with men, that was a good sign. If Harris was hitting 55% with women, that was a good sign. And in the upper Midwest states, he was getting closer to that sort of magic number than she was. So what they call it the bro strategy or whatever, it seems to have paid some dividends up there. I mean, we're still waiting, but, it's looking pretty good for him.
So we can definitively say that the poll that we don't talk about in Iowa was kind of off. The Des Moines Register poll.
I love Ann Seltzer. She's a giant and a pioneer in our field. I think what we were looking at, ironically, was not so much the top line in that race, but what Seltzer had said was that senior women were breaking away from Trump over the abortion issue. And I think our friend Sean Trende had a really good observation where he said that may be true, but it may not help Harris, because that's something that could occur in Iowa where abortion was a hot issue, but might not occur nationally in other states where abortion wasn't as salient.
We have to let you go, but really quickly, what's happening in Minnesota?
That's what I was going to ask, exact question.
Minnesota, why is that still?
They have done what sometimes they do in states. They've stopped counting votes.
Really?
And we're kind of close
After all
to.
we've been through with that.
After all we've been through?
We're at a level where we're close to statistical significance, but it's not quite there yet. And there are
Is
still.
Tim Walz in charge of that?
Yeah, well,
there you go.
Rumor has it.
We have to let you go because you
Wow.
have some more data crunching to do.
I do.
We appreciate you coming
Thank you,
by.
Darren.
Thanks,
It really
Darren.
does
Good
help
job,
a
Darren.
lot.
For coming
Good
by.
job.
Great
Very
job.
nice to see you guys. Thank you.
Let's check in with Aisha Hosni at the
Let's
Trump
do that.
campaign headquarters. Aisha?
Hey, you guys. Well, all signs here are pointing to perhaps imminent remarks from the former president shortly. The biggest debt giveaway was a short while ago. Somebody went onto the stage right behind me and put up the glass for the teleprompter. So perhaps somebody will be speaking to the crowd here shortly, and that might be the former president. We've got eyes outside, our security details outside watching to see if the motorcade arrives from Mar-a-Lago. I did get a video from someone at the Mar-a-Lago party a short while ago, and folks there were jubilant and cheering and clapping. They had Fox News on the screen. They were watching as we were calling states and more races for the former president. The excitement here is climbing every minute, and people here are anxiously awaiting to see if the former president shows up here tonight and perhaps gives a victory speech. Back to you.
Oh, Aisha, thanks.
Thank you very
Had a
much.
cough drop?
We'll head back there. If the former President Trump is about to take the stand and speak there. So we're going to keep a close eye on that. 1 a.m. in New York. Polls have just closed in Alaska. The Fox News decision desk says it is too early to call. Trump has a lead in our Fox News voter analysis, so we will get you back to Alaska when we have a little more data to report there.
And there you see 248 to 216, the Electoral College map. We are waiting on the blue wall, which could be a red wall. You just heard from Darren Shaw, and I think that data and the way he laid it out there and their decision making really kind of lifts the curtain to how these guys operate based on our Fox News voter analysis, which again was 120,000 voters, that a rolling poll, and then the raw vote total that they came in. Alex Hoff is in Pennsylvania. We'll check in on the ground there. Alexandria.
Yeah.
To report there. And then you see the 248.
Hey, good to be with you. Yeah, the crowd here in Bucks County, they are excited by some trends they are seeing, not necessarily expecting to result tonight. Pennsylvania's results and the count is historically slow. It took 4 days in 2020, but the Commonwealth Secretary does believe that it's going to be faster this time. New technology, more trading will come into all this. Now, looking at Philadelphia, both the Trump and the Harris campaigns, they are saying they're outperforming there, but Team Trump feels that this could be good news for them because their
pockets of support inside of South Philadelphia, Northeast Philadelphia. And there is a saying that goes that Republicans can gauge how well they are doing in the state by how much they are losing Philadelphia by. Simply, it cuts into the margins that Democrats need. And here in Bucks County, they're seeing themselves on the screen right now. It means a lot. If he were to win this county, Bucks County, I mean, that would be the first time a Republican presidential candidate has taken this county since 1988. And these suburbs of Philadelphia, this is what pushed Biden over the edge in 2020. Harris needs to do well in these counties if she stands to have a chance of taking the state, guys. Brett, Martha?
Alex,
thanks.
you. So let's go to Bill and see, what are you cooking up over there, Bill?
You know, I was just looking at New York. You know, we heard so much about MSG and the insult comic about the Puerto Rican joke. And, you know, Trump, you know, New York's his home, right? I mean, now living in Florida, Mar-a-Lago. But just look at this. I'm going to go ahead and use the slide bar and just, okay, 8 years ago when he's running against Hillary Clinton, this is his margin in New York, all right? 37.5 compared to almost 59 for Hillary Clinton. And then against Joe Biden, it was what? Was it? Oh my gosh! It was 0.3 of a point. All right. And now we come to 2020 and see the numbers on the board here. That's a pretty decent performance, and we're just getting some insight here in the New York City. He did well over 40% of the vote here in New York as well. One thing I was checking out here, guys, in this is the number, right? Path to 270. I guess in theory right now, if you were to close out, you know, you're at 248. If you were to close out Pennsylvania, and even though Alaska has ranked choice voting, which could take a while to post a number here, nonetheless, that would put him right at the number at 270. So even around the blue wall, that's possible too. That goes back to the argument that we've been talking about for some time now, that Trump had more paths to the Oval Office than Harris did. Let's go check on Pennsylvania one more time here, and we'll see. Okay, it's holding steady at 3.5. 90% of the estimated vote out there is now reporting here. In Michigan, you know, the blue wall, 6.3, so that number is stuck a little bit here. Estimated somewhat, maybe 40% of the vote still missing there in Michigan. In Wisconsin, you know, maybe we get some more numbers in. It got 85% of the vote in here. And, you know, Trump's holding on to this 4.2 advantage in Wisconsin. And Wisconsin, they take a lot of pride in what they do. They want to get the vote out quickly. Maybe Milwaukee notwithstanding, but the rest of the state, you know, that's their idea. So we could get that in maybe a little more as we go into what, the 2 a.m. hour? Are we going to 2 a.m. or 3? What are we doing here? Arizona sticking here at 0.7. What's that?
Just keep going.
Okay, you got it. This is Nevada, so we're starting to get our first numbers in from Nevada. For any of the nerds and geeks out there that have been deep in the weeds about the early voting, you've been watching Nevada. And Nevada's been a pretty good marker there for Republicans. This is a quick count here now. It's saying 75% of the vote is in, and Trump's got a firm lead at 3.4 points, roughly just a tad under 35,000 votes. Clark County, Las Vegas, 70% of the votes in the Silver State here all come from Nevada. Let's see what's happening right now. Okay, Harris, just a tick over 50.2 with 80%. I want to go comparison's sake, 8 years ago, why not, right? In Nevada, I don't know what this number is. We'll find out together, okay? So Hillary Clinton did 2 points better than Kamala Harris, and Joe Biden, okay, did even better, you know, 3.5 over what Kamala Harris is putting up right now. So it appears if you're in the Trump camp, that's a pretty good number right now, just shy of 51% in Nevada early on. Here's Karl Rove's favorite place in the world. This is Washoe County, right, Karl? Right now, a point, it's close, right? 0.2 points. You know, what happened with Biden? Was it close? Yeah, pretty close, but Biden won the county. So in all likelihood, Trump's got a chance to flip this if it holds up right now. Super slim and more vote to come in, but Nevada is looking good too. And now you start to wonder, you know, how high does this number go on the Electoral College?
Yeah, New York Times Needle is now at greater than 95% and likely to win the popular vote is what they have. Well, let's check in. Well, let's go out to Vegas. Jeff Paul is live in Las Vegas. Jeff, what's happening?
Well, a lot of excitement here and optimism at the Sam Brown watch party. He is, of course, the Republican candidate trying to unseat the Democratic incumbent Senator Jackie Rosen. And just a few moments ago, when Bill was talking about Nevada, you heard a lot of cheers here from the crowd at the Sam Brown watch party. Just knowing some of those initial numbers, it took nearly 3 hours to finally get some of those numbers. We're hoping to get another batch in the coming hours, but Nevada has an interesting law where it's, you can vote right up until the 7 o'clock hour, and if you're in line, they'll let you vote. And in order to release those results, they wait until the very last person in line votes. That person, it took 2 hours and 48 minutes, so still a very long night ahead of us. But for the folks here at the Sam Brown watch party, a lot of optimism in the air.
All right, Jeff Paul in Las Vegas. Jeff, thanks.
So our panel is still with us, and we have some new folks that are here as well. Kevin McCarthy is joining us. Karl Rove is back. Juan Williams is here. Great to have all of you with us. Kevin McCarthy, let me start with you. Give us an update on what your overall take on the night so far, and then maybe drill down on some of what you're seeing in these House situations as well.
The Senate Republicans did an extraordinary job. They surpassed all expectations. President Trump is on his way. And I think President Trump is going to help the Republicans hold the House, but it's going to be very narrow, maybe even narrower than we have now.
But you think they could do it?
Maybe even narrower than you have now, you said.
Yeah, it may be exactly the same or maybe smaller. Look at the 2 seats I said at the very beginning of the night. Watch Pennsylvania 7 and Pennsylvania 8. I think we're going to pick those both up. You said North Carolina 1. We're probably going to lose that by 1 point. She did an extraordinary job.
Wow.
Then you look at Maine. We're ahead there. But we have some incumbents that have fallen in New York. California's just in now, but don't read those numbers yet because it's just the first part coming in. We're going to have to wait some time to see where we're there. Arizona, we've got a couple incumbents in trouble. Bacon's coming back in Omaha, maybe there. If we hold the House, if this is a trifecta, the credit goes to President Trump. But it also fundamentally means something different. You can do reconciliation when it comes to tax reform. So you don't need 60 votes in the Senate. Having the Senate as large as he is, he's going to get the cabinet that he wants. The other thing that's going to happen is you're not going to have a Hakeem Jeffries that's going to try to impeach him every single week. So America is going to see ability to govern. And if Republicans take this moment in time to not play games and focus on the issues, they can grow it the next time. Otherwise, it's going to be very competitive in 2 years.
But Juan Williams, if it's as big as we think it could be, we obviously haven't made these calls yet, but it's trending that way, and the pathway for her to win is getting narrower and narrower. Isn't it not a mandate? And Hakeem Jeffries and the thought of impeaching with what we're seeing tonight seems like wouldn't be the right move.
Well, I think the Democrats are dispirited at this moment, and I think that the likelihood, as we pointed out, is that Trump will be the president. And I think that, for me, talking to people like Darren and political professionals around, no one anticipated the size of this mandate, as you call it. I think that there is even recriminations now among Democrats as to Biden and whether Biden should have dropped out earlier or Biden should have stayed. Would a white male have done better? Obviously, Trump has defeated 2 women and now a black woman. So there's all of these questions. But to my mind, it seems to me incredible that a guy who led an insurrection against the United States government is potentially now, like a phoenix, going back into the Oval Office. It's unbelievable.
Well, you have to consider the fact, Juan, that a lot of people didn't think that was an insurrection. They thought it was a riot, but not an insurrection. And had they thought there was really an insurrection, I don't think he could have won.
Well,
I don't
know.
The exaggerations about that day.
Well, I'm not exaggerating.
About the alleged threat to democracy is a piece of what happened tonight.
Well, I don't think so. I think, again, I'm giving you my perspective.
Yeah. And I'm giving you mine.
Right. So I listened to you as my friend. But I'm going to tell you what I saw was not only a riot in terms of the violence, but a direct action intended to stop certification of a presidential election.
Understood. And we've talked a lot about it.
That's why I said that.
And we've
that's
talked a lot about it. And the
campaign, very clearly. I'm not trying to hype anything.
The campaign ran a lot of ads about it, talked a lot about it, and more, half the country now, Juan is going to say, that is not what I care about. I
Correct.
care about my economy. I care about immigration.
No,
I
see,
care
that's
about-
where we differ. I'm not sold on this idea that, oh, it was the cost of eggs. I worry that it was, well, I'm not voting for this woman, or I'm not voting for this black
I
woman.
don't know. That's not what we see in our data.
Well, here's the thing. Where do you see that? Because a moment ago, Darren was out here and he said, in fact, not only did the bro strategy work, and the bro strategy largely worked along the lines of white men, but that the bro strategy also had some impact in terms of Latino and black men who came along and gave higher percentages.
All right, Carl, weigh in.
I just want to make one more point with one. I spoke to Jack Brewer this week, and here's what he said if Trump wins. He said he won because black men felt that Democrats and elites put immigrants before us. Your thoughts on that?
I just think that that's possible. I don't know that for a fact. I think there are tensions between racial groups, and people might feel that. Obviously, you can exploit those tensions, and you can exacerbate them to the point where you can politically benefit from it. Do I think that's the reason he won? No. I think the reason he won is you look at that bro strategy and the white male turnout and white grievance politics that he has used to great success in this country.
Carl.
I think he's trailing his prior 2020 numbers with whites.
Well, you know what? I think that the
Increased Hispanics and black males.
Yeah.
Weigh in here.
It's not sufficient to make up. It's not sufficient to have this kind of night.
Look, I just think it is extremely odd to suggest that black men are somehow prejudiced because they vote for a white candidate who says, I want to make certain that everybody has an opportunity to succeed in our great economy. I want you to be more prosperous, and I will do things that will make it possible for you to make a better life. That is an appeal to their best instincts. He did not go out and say, vote for me because I'm not a woman. Don't go vote for me because I'm a white man. That would not have attracted those votes. They got attracted to him because they thought he was a strong, effective leader, and they thought he would do something about the issues they cared the most about, which is an economy in which they think they get the short stick, inflation, which has decimated their purchasing power, and illegal immigration, which has affected their communities deeply. And to suggest that somehow black men are racist because they supported a white man is just too far, Juan.
You're distorting my comments, but let me just say to you,
I followed your comment to its logical conclusion.
Carl, hold on. We're not saying most black men did not vote for Donald Trump. So I never said anything like that. That's just not true.
Oh, you suggested it's only
I'm saying to you, I'm saying to you that in terms of this bro strategy for white males, the whole notion of I'm bad, I talk about women in the most disparaging way. There's some men who just said, you know what, I get into, I want to be in on that. I want to be a badass guy. And I think they like Trump's image and the caricature he portrays.
I think they supported him in spite of that, not because of it.
Harold Ford Jr.
Because of what he offered to make their life better.
Harold Ford Jr.
Look, I tend to agree with Juan about January 6th. I'm surprised by the fact that the country got over that as quickly as we seemingly did, which speaks to the political comeback. I've said here earlier, I think that the fact that some of these issues around the economy and the border were not addressed more forthrightly, I think had an impact. That being said, we're going to have some analysis around this and around whether or not the driving up of support amongst men, what was behind that, how did it work, did the gender gap with women, did black women, white women, Hispanic women, we still don't know those numbers. We'll have an opportunity to dig into some of those things, but I don't interpret what Juan is saying any more than that.
All right, more to talk about here.
There's a lot more coming up as election night moves on at 1:15 on the East Coast. We continue to get more vote in. We will be able to make some calls when that vote is in full. Our coverage continues next. Stay with us.
Zero now.
Great hats on.
I saw someone with a really large one. Yeah.
As we look now at what we have, Pennsylvania. Is this a call, ladies and gentlemen? We are now projecting that Donald J. Trump will win the state of Pennsylvania. Former President Donald J. Trump will win the state of Pennsylvania, and thereby he is on his way to becoming the 47th president of the United States. With this, the path for Vice President Harris has narrowed, and there's really no path going forward. It's vanished. This is historic. Everything was about Pennsylvania. Everything from the beginning was about Pennsylvania. Now, former President Trump will win the state of Pennsylvania, and we can make that call, the 19 electoral votes. That puts him at 267, not officially over the 270, but the path that it takes to get to 270, he is well on his way to becoming the 47th president of the United States in what is going to be the biggest political phoenix from the ashes story that we have ever seen, ever. I mean, I'm going to say it's more than Grover Cleveland in
1892.
Yeah, I don't think that Grover Cleveland was not the subject of a Russia investigation, 2 impeachments, 2 assassination attempts.
Indictments.
They have indictments, 91 indictments, convictions, and there is almost nothing that hasn't been thrown at this former president. And his tenacity in wanting to go back and run again, which he announced immediately after he lost in 2020. This is a huge, historic moment in the United States of America as the former President Trump is closing in with just a few electoral votes away now from clinching 270 as Pennsylvania is called for Donald Trump.
We're looking live, 1:21 a.m. in the morning at Trump headquarters. The cheers coming up. We're told the former president is there as
to revamp, and perhaps we should think about that. But don't write off the people, the American people, for the decision they made this evening.
Charlie Hurt, he will be the 47th president of the United States after everything that we saw in this election. It's hard to understand how some in the mainstream media are going to take this because it was so over the top one way that they thought it was done. There was a landslide prediction from a lot in the media that she was going to have the landslide. It looks like he's going to have the landslide tonight.
Yeah, it's truly remarkable. The revolution rolls on, and this is not just a victory for the White House tonight, but also this is the places fellow Republicans.
It really does. I think there are parallels to 1980, Mark Penn. When you look at Jimmy Carter, we had hostages in Iran. We have hostages in Gaza right now. Very high inflation and a malaise in many ways in the country that I think these people who have been called a lot of names have had enough of. What is your impression of what this means tonight?
Well, I think this means a lot to a lot of people. I think the working class are looking for a renewal of American jobs. I think people are looking for a border that is sane and an immigration system that works. I think a lot of people over in the Middle East are looking for Iran to pull back in the face of a president whom they fear. And, look, I think it's going to be incumbent on the Democratic Party to understand that the people have spoken and to dissemble and dismantle this lawfare system that they have built up here, which is going to raise a whole series of questions that are going to have to be answered now. But they cannot say that they are better than Donald Trump and recreate a system that does not recognize that he won and the people have spoken and he is going to be the 47th president.
We haven't talked about foreign policy a lot, but imagine the Saudis, making a normalization deal with Israel in the face of a new president here. Imagine
I'm going there tomorrow night.
Imagine a Ukraine deal that Donald Trump talks about. Kevin O'Leary, what is the market going to do in the wake of this?
I love this. What's happened here is the system self-corrected. When you try and break the American model, it fixes itself. And I think people should give credit within the Democratic Party. Donald Trump saved them tonight, too, because they're going to have to take a spatula to these policies and bring it back to the center over the next 4 years and, in a way, reset. And we talked about this earlier, but he saved entrepreneurship. He saved the entire model of the S&P 500, because taxing 20% higher was a really bad idea, and it self-corrected. Capital, and this is why I'm getting on a plane tomorrow night. I intentionally didn't leave till tomorrow night so I could go to Geneva, go to Abu Dhabi, go to Riyadh, and say it's 21% corporate taxes, 100% not going to change. That is very important for people like me that bring capital back to this country. It fixed itself. It fixed itself. And I think that's why America works. It has worked for 200 years. When it gets too crazy, it fixes itself. And whether you love Trump or you hate him, every Democrat owes him a thank you very much, Mr. President.
By the way, as the markets, the poly market and all these election markets were moving, Bitcoin went up exponentially.
Yes, I'm long Bitcoin.
Are you? So you're buying later.
You know, speaking of Bitcoin, I'm also struck by just calling Pennsylvania here, Dana. Trump embraced Elon Musk in an enormous way. A lot of stories were written that said that he was going to blow it in Pennsylvania, that the people who were working on his outreach teams didn't know what they were doing. He's going to
And he got a lot of criticism. Remember the $1 million giveaway for registered voters? But
court for that.
Selena Zito, who's somebody that we follow and we've had on the show many times, and she knows that area very well. She said the people of that region love somebody who is a big thinker, who wants to create jobs, who is like looking into the future, and they can get behind that. And they love somebody who can really lead. And leadership takes courage. And you have to be willing to make decisions where you are going to be criticized. I think this is one of the problems that Kamala Harris has always had. She doesn't want to take a position on anything. We haven't even talked about how in California, the law to basically make shoplifting illegal again passed overwhelmingly. And Gascon, our friend down, the DA in Los Angeles, lost by 22 votes. I mean, this is in California, so it was everywhere.
22 points.
And 2 days before, 22 points, thank you. She wouldn't even take a position on that. 75% of the people in California wanted it gone, and you can't take a position to be with them?
Not only that, you were part of Prop 47, which changed the law the other way when you were in office.
So not wanting to take a position and not being willing to be criticized is a problem if you want to be a leader at that level.
She had that affliction in 2020. Why didn't her own party say, you're not the right candidate? I mean, run a process.
Well, they did. They ran her out of town right before any votes were cast in 2019.
But the same
and then she's
affliction
out of there.
hit her here. The same problem she had in 2020 hit her in 2024.
She's the same person.
I mean, it's not all her fault. They put her in a race that we now know couldn't win.
Yeah.
But Karen, in fairness to Democrats, there's no doubt. I agree with you on the unrealized capital gains. We shouldn't be taxing that. But we produce more wealth, more innovation, more oil, more cures, more therapeutics over the last 3 years. So I hear you. Democrats are not bad for the economy. Some things she proposed that I'm with you on. But we're a great country, and we're going to continue to be great. And I trust and hope and believe that President
Your party will be great again.
I want the
and you can thank Donald Trump for that.
But he inherited an economy also that was in pretty good shape. I don't want to quarrel about that. All I want is going forward. I agree with you. I want the country to be great, and I hope that both of the parties can work together to try and do that. And I salute President Trump tonight. What a great win, and I agree with you in this regard. My party's got to reimagine and reinvent itself going forward.
Listen, hold on. I wrote about this, the unity and
you did.
Past presidents and past losers and winners and what they said. This is a big speech, Britt, for former President Trump. As he gets ready to deliver this in front of a crowd, he's obviously taken the slings and arrows and everything.
Revenge stuff, and that he was going to want retribution, and this is what everyone heard. And there were times when he had language that was that matched that, but he said that he wanted success to be his revenge, and that he wanted a successful America. And I would imagine that we're going to hear something along those lines tonight, but we'll see.
Brett, you wrote in your piece, you quoted one of those great old Republican presidents, H.W. Bush, who said that a campaign is a disagreement and an election is a decision, and decisions clear the way for harmony and peace. You know,
but there are a lot of Thanksgiving tables that people are still going to have hard feelings after this election, more than any other election.
I have one of them.
And if you passing the Brussels sprouts is not going to be as easy Thanksgiving Day. But this is a chance to move forward, Britt. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that one thing that can happen here, and it happened to Biden, in my view, when Biden was elected, we had every reason to believe that he would be this sort of moderate deal-making guy that he'd been when he was in the Senate. Yes, he's always followed sort of the drift of his party, but he'd worked across the aisle with many senators, had Republican friends and so on. We thought that would probably be the kind of president he was. And then something happened. Trump went to Georgia and made a mess of that Senate, those 2 Senate races down there, and the Democrats ended up with control of the Senate. At which point, old Biden started getting, these hysterical sugar plums dancing in his head, and went out for a very aggressive agenda.
Sure, there were articles about FDR. How he was going to be the next FDR.
The next FDR. He was going to out-Obama Obama. Remember that?
Yep.
Well, and that, in my view, that was he would have been if the Republicans had maintained control of the Senate. First thing that wouldn't have happened was all that wild spending that led to the inflation, or led to a big part of the inflation. And Biden and the country would have been better off because of it. There's always a danger in overreading your mandate. One wonders if Trump will be sober-minded about his.
I think that happened to Biden. Early on, remember, he said he's going to be returned to norms, and then the historians came in and said, no, you could be bigger than FDR. So he says, fine, okay, I'll spend all the money. Then they caused inflation, and now they end up with this result.
Well, he has said that this looks like new President Trump, if he gets to 270, which we expect he will, fairly shortly. Yes, exactly. Has a moment to bring about the unity that people expected after the last election. Of course, we would be kidding ourselves to think that there won't be a tremendous response to this, tremendous backlash in a lot of corners of the country. So
listen, he's going to get there because Alaska is going to be Republican, but we're not done as far as calling states. There could be even more states that go Trump's way. This could be a massive landslide just by what we're looking at in the polls. Fox News Decision Desk count now project, though, Vice President Harris will win Minnesota, and her running mate Tim Walz serves as the state's governor there. That takes it up to 267 to 226. But again, Donald J. Trump will be the 47th president of the United States. More Democracy 24 special coverage next.
It is a very big night, and they are about to explode at Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach. You see thousands of people waiting, and we are about to hear from the next president of the United States. He will be 45 and 47, and we're waiting for him to join the room, and we'll take you there, obviously, as soon as that gets underway. In the meantime, Grady Trimble is in Michigan. Let's get a quick update just outside of Detroit. Hi, Grady.
Hey, Martha. Yeah, people were getting a little bit tired here, but then the call for Pennsylvania was like a jolt of electricity through this room at the Michigan GOP watch party. And the crowd started chanting USA. They started chanting Trump, 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 as it now appears he will be the 47th president of the United States. Now, in addition to Trump and the call for him in Pennsylvania, they're also excited about the possibility that Michigan could be the state that tips him over that magic 270 number. We're also following a very close Senate race here in Michigan, and they're feeling very confident about that as well. Republican candidate Mike Rogers looks like he could cruise to victory with the help of former President Trump. Democratic candidate Alyssa Slotkin, she went out to her crowd at her watch party at around 12:30 tonight and told them to go home and go to sleep, where here they extended this ballroom venue all through the night if they had to, and now it looks like the crowd is fired up as they await former President Trump taking the stage.
Okay, Grady, thank you. It is really important to point out how big the coattails could be tonight. Think about Bernie Moreno in Ohio, was thought dead in the water against Sherrod Brown. He wins. We have right now at this hour, as Grady mentioned, Mike Rogers in Michigan is up. Looks like he is getting closer. We haven't made a call there yet. Hovde in Wisconsin leading right now. Sam Brown in Nevada is closing in on Jackie Rosen. Wow. We're talking about historic numbers here. If all of these dominoes fall, you're talking about a Senate that could be 54-46, 55-45. That wasn't in the cards.
Not
That
at
wasn't
all.
on anybody's bingo card when you came into election night.
But these candidates have all fought really strong races, and they have all closed in a very strong way. And in fact, many of them were sort of pulling into +5, +6 in just over the last 3 weeks. So it's a fascinating part of the story. Hopefully, we'll be able to call some more of those soon.
Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says with these coattails, you could see the House going Republican as well, and that would be a part of this story as well. Let's go back out to Trace Gallagher on the West Coast with his panel. Hey, Trace.
Brett, thank you. Martha, thank you as well. We've got our panel, Steve Hilton, Jody Armour, Kaylee McGee-White, and Jono Caldwell. You're talking to your panel, Brett and Martha, and we were talking to ours, and Kaylee McGee-White was struck by the whole concept that, again, Trump was undercounted. Kaylee McGee.
This is the third consecutive polling miss in a presidential cycle for Donald Trump. And we really need to be asking ourselves, why do they keep getting it wrong? And at this point, it is a choice. Back in 2016, you could argue that you were blindsided. You didn't expect it. You cannot say that anymore. This was predictable from the very start. And I think the reason they keep getting it wrong is because they still don't understand the average Trump voter. They cannot wrap their heads around why so many people support him. And it's because for a long time, actually for the past decade or so, Democrats in power didn't think they needed to. And even worse, they didn't want to. They didn't want to have to stoop down to understand the concerns over immigration, over the economy. And guess what? The American people sent a very clear message tonight that you better start paying attention, and you better start paying attention soon.
We heard a lot of words, demographic. I don't know how many times we heard it, Steve Hilton, but Gianna, you talk about black voters, black male voters especially. We heard it again and again tonight, and you think it's worth talking about.
I think this is a historic night. Black men will now, those who voted for Trump will be counted as those who helped save America from further decline. I mean, Kamala Harris has tried her best to create these accents like, you better thank a union member, all of these things that she's done to try to appeal to this community, even going on Oprah Winfrey's talk show or whatever that was to say, oh, I'll pull out my gun and shoot someone that tries to come into my house. I mean, this has become nonsensical to the point that I don't know if we're looking at Medea runs for president or not. I mean, this is outstanding what has happened from the black male perspective, and I hope the Republican Party takes note.
Yeah, and you talk about young males and younger voters, Jody Armour. You're a law professor at the University of Southern California. You know what young people are geared into. Are you surprised when you see these voter analysis numbers that young voters came out heavy for Donald Trump?
Yeah, well, young voters can sniff out a fraud. They can sniff out somebody who's chameleon-like. She changes her position according to the prevailing winds. They didn't like that. Many across the country, young students said, for me, a red line also is mass atrocities, is collective punishment, is what I see going on in the Middle East, and I see us as complicit in. So they, were saying, I'm not just that enthusiastic. Yeah. And I'm not going to get out.
I got 15 seconds for you, Steve.
I just think when I see this unfold, Trace, it is just a massive victory.
Oh, we got to jump back.
Sense.
Sorry, guys, back to you. We got Trump coming out.
Trace, thank you. The Fox News decision desk can now officially project that Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
The former president's comeback will be complete with a win in Wisconsin, a state that he narrowly lost 4 years ago. He is now the second president in U.S. history to win non-consecutive terms. The first was Grover Cleveland in the late 1800s. Senator J.D. Vance will become the 50th vice president of the United States. Voters express deep frustration with the Biden administration, and former President Trump and the future President Trump overperformed in urban areas, particularly with men, proving that the strategy that they doubled and tripled down on over the course of the last few months absolutely succeeded and brought him back to the White House.
47th president of the United States. Former President Trump now defeats Vice President Kamala Harris, who entered this race just over 100 days ago. And for Democrats, they were projecting the possibility of running the table with battleground states. David Plouffe with the Democratic campaign of Harris campaign suggested that just yesterday. Now it is possible that Donald Trump runs the table with these states and builds on a big landslide electoral win. We don't know where the popular vote is going to finish out, But we do know that he will be going back to the White House, and with him, Brit Hume, will be a lot of changes because he will have been there once and will know what he wants to do.
You know, he often accounts for the fact that he had so much turnover in his first term, in his term as president, by the fact that he didn't really know Washington, and he was new to this realm that he had come to win the presidency in, and he promises us that now he knows whom he wants to hire. Now he knows the kind of people he wants to have around him. A lot of people are saying that means a lot of will. But it's going to be very interesting to see the kind of people he reaches out to and reaches out for in the days and weeks ahead as he builds his administration.
We're joined by Kayleigh McEnany, Trey Gowdy, and Katie Pavlich. Kayleigh, you've been a part of the last administration. You've seen you can see the joy on all these people's faces. Think about the angst and the, all that this campaign has been through. And now there is the prospect of creating what you want to create in a second administration. Your thoughts, 30,000 feet of this win.
Indictments, 2 assassination attempts, an unlikely come-from-behind victory, and history is made tonight. This is a huge moment, particularly because this is a tectonic shift of the Republican. Poor, boisterous Trumpian speech. Speech B was a speech full of unity, and he looked up, Ivanka said, saw the faces of crying Hillary voters. He ripped up the boisterous speech and said he wanted to heal the nation. And the first words he said were an appreciation for Hillary Clinton, for her service to our country. And then he said, now it is time for America to bind the wounds of division. And he said, we are a party of all races, creeds, and religions. That is more true tonight than it was 8 years ago. And I fully expect President Trump right now is maybe ripping up that more boisterous speech and preparing to unite the country.
It's an amazing message.
I hope Kayleigh's right. I hope you're right. And we're gonna get a chance to see here in a minute. Trey Gowdy said something on your show the other day about how one of the things that you hope also is they're a little more prepared this time. They've got a great transition team, and they're going to need it. And I hope that there are a lot of people who want to go in and be helpful.
Trey?
Yeah, I think his transition team has done a wonderful job vetting potential candidates. And to Kayleigh's point, I think a liberated Donald Trump, he's never going to be on the ballot again. This is his last term. I think, Harold, he will surprise his detractors. I think he will be not anything like what his detractors have described him as being now that he is liberated. If I'm wrong, you can hold me to that.
I hope you're right.
I think he will. A liberated Donald Trump is going to shock his detractor.
He has said that the assassination attempts had an impact on him. We saw him in many ways return to the very rough and tumble style that we've seen in Donald Trump towards the end of this. But now he will take the stage tonight as the next president of the United States, and he will not be able to run again.
Yeah.
And I think that is another liberating factor potentially for President Trump. Katie.
We'll never underestimate the power of unfinished business. This is a president who has caught lightning in a bottle twice, and the second time around, he now has a MAGA mandate. He will have a Senate that he can use to push through his cabinet appointees who can work with him on legislation, who could potentially replace a number of justices on the Supreme Court.
Who could build a wall.
He could build a wall. He has a working group in Washington, D.C. We'll see what happens with the House, but he also has been working very hard on his transition, get the right people around him. He talks about the lessons he's learned about the first time in the White House. So this is a mandate tonight for him. And I think you should get a lot of credit for doing the work on the ground, going to these states to pull these Senate candidates across the line with him.
Britt, what do you think the analysis is going to be? There's going to be a lot of time to digest all of this. We're focused now on what the incoming president is going to say. What do you think?
Sit on them. Look, Donald Trump won this on policy and personality. I don't want to be remiss here. He is talking about energy independence, manufacturing, an economy where everybody is working, no new foreign wars, getting out of the entanglements we currently have, respecting and resourcing law enforcement, border patrol, military. And by the way, friends, we don't get those policies without that personality. What did we hear during the Republican primaries? I want Donald Trump's policies without his personalities. Good luck with that. You don't get this strength and this resolve and this toughness. You don't get those policies without that. But I want to say this. It's on this phone that Huma Abedin placed the call 2:30 a.m. on November 9th, 2016. And on the other line was Secretary Clinton to concede the race to Donald Trump on my phone. I handed it to him, And I said to Vice President-elect Mike Pence, make sure Hillary actually concedes. She did. And President Trump was gracious to them, too. They came to the luncheon at the Capitol after the inauguration. The Obamas and the Clintons were there. I was there to see it myself. And then something just changed. The Washington Post said, let's impeach him at noon, 2 minutes after he's inaugurated. Melania wrote about this in her book. So, Harold, I hear you. I hope everybody can unify. But I got to tell you, my friend, I think it starts with your party and not mine.
Fair enough.
They had this guy in a courtroom. He's not an indoor cat. I get it. They had him in a courtroom. They have him impeached. They have him. And whether people think that was justified or not, now is a good time to respect the will of the people. Forget about us, the will of the people.
I agree with you. I'm just saying be a gracious winner and let's move the country
Yes,
forward.
but he will
I agree. And I know you will. That was my only point.
I heard a gracious winner today when I talked to him. I really did. He's known for a while. He was going to. I wrote a piece on FoxNews.com October 11th saying he's going to have a narrow landslide. I think he's felt that for a while, but he wanted to go and earn it.
And I even think the
And she
people
didn't
around
earn
him
it.
have to be gracious too. I think he will. I don't know him as well as you, but I hope the people around him can be gracious as well.
That's a different question.
We can always hope.
Yeah, well, that comes from the top.
Once more, I just want to say how much money was spent on this election. $15.9 billion with a bill.
Wow.
B, if you spend $1,000 a day for 2,740 years, that would be $1 billion. It was 16 times that. What has been spent on every race, the presidency, the whole deal. $16 billion. And here we are.
What is that, a check you can write to for every American? What did you
About
say?
$50. It's about 40.
I want my $50.
But I just want to say, every presidential race has a medium. You go back to television, cable. Yeah. This was, in some ways, a podcast experience of a campaign. And those are free to go on podcasts. And you wonder how much of that money really needed to be spent when there's a lot of ways to reach people. But I think it's really interesting and something we'll be talking about a lot in terms of the reach of these endorsements.
You know what I was struck by? The
Rogan
final
and Musk and the rest of them.
The final ads where
They were excellent.
They talked about making America great again, but then ending with the assassination attempt and that fist in the air, the iconic image, and the fight.
Absolutely.
Warrior president.
And it worked.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, toughest son of a gun we ever saw. And that was the last note we see in that ad. And I think, for whatever you think of the guy, you got to admire that.
Yep.
I mean, the adversity that he's faced, everything we've seen in other presidencies and other political figures who've gone through all kinds of trouble are pale in comparison to what he's been put through.
No,
maybe it's time for his enemies to stop it.
Not only that, but the energy that he has is truly amazing. He's the Energizer Bunny. Let's check in with Aisha Hasni, speaking of the Energizer Bunny, at Trump headquarters in West Palm. Aisha, this has been a big night all night long. I'm sure it's really getting fever pitch now.
A big night, Brett and Martha, a long campaign for the former president, for all of us, the press corps that have been following him around now for more than a year. The crowd went absolutely nuts when Fox News called it here, and people were hugging each other, they were high-fiving each other, that people were on FaceTiming. I think they couldn't believe it that this happened tonight and they didn't have to wait days and days and days. We are now awaiting the former president to take the podium. He is here in the building, as is his running mate, now Vice President-elect J.D. Vance. They're backstage. We were told they were going to come out as soon as the election was called, and so now we're just waiting. We asked for a 2-minute warning. I don't know if we're going to get one, but hopefully we will see him soon. And so I just want to add a little bit of perspective, just as a Capitol Hill reporter that's been covering the former president for a while. When I came to Congress 3 years ago, talked privately with many powerful Republicans who did not want to see the former president back in Washington, and then to see the legal battles that he went through and Republicans having to stand up for him. And then he went through the primary process. As Kellyanne Conway just said, he earned it state by state by state, and then came back to Washington in the spring and went to the RNC and claimed the nomination. This is the greatest comeback that I've ever witnessed personally myself. And so I look forward to seeing what he says to the country here tonight and to his supporters. Back to you.
Aisha, thank you. The Harris team is now texting to say Vice President Harris will speak tomorrow, and that will be her response to the election results. That's all we have from the Harris team, which is really strange. I mean, from a PR perspective, Dan?
No, I also just think it's a shame because I remember when John Kerry did this to George W. Bush in 2004, and you work so hard, and I know that they're disappointed, but you should concede and let your opponent have their election night, and let everybody that's there at Trump, at Mar-a-Lago, where are they? They're in Palm Beach.
They're in West Palm at the convention center.
At the convention center, like, let them have their moment without anyone. Like, I remember Andy Card had to come in and say, well, yes, we know we won, but we have to wait until John Kerry concedes, and then we all had to traipse back in the next morning and wait, and you don't get that moment. I don't think it's right. And
that's not to say there's not going to be a phone call. There could be a phone call tonight, but she's not going to speak publicly.
If there's a phone call, they have to make it public. And then nobody needs to hear from her. So if I were her, I would do it tonight.
I mean, they had that whole setup in front of Howard University.
Yes, all of her people were already there.
Everybody was there, and it does feel like you want to just collect the moment and do it the way that people used to.
They were holding out hope. They were holding out hope that the blue wall could somehow come together, but it's going to be a red wall.
90 minutes before that, they were told to go to bed.
Yeah. I got that text.
90 minutes before all of this, Jen O'Malley Dillon, the Harris campaign person, said, everyone can go to bed and come back tomorrow. So
she didn't even address her own supporters. We want her to call President Trump. She didn't talk to the people who were assembled there for hours for her. It just seems very ungracious. By the way, it ended up being a very bad split screen. You probably couldn't see it in here, but they're filing out, and he's expanding his folks, and they're all excited for him. Look, I think that Kamala Harris was a sign of the times, but I think that Trump's a metaphor for the country. And when he says we don't surrender, fight, 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 we get back up, I just think I think that's what it is. The other thing I just want to say, maybe it's as a Catholic, maybe it's just as a Trump supporter, maybe it's just as a flawed human being. We all get second chances in this life. Rarely do we get a second chance as big as this one. And I have got to believe the man that I know and that Kayleigh worked with is going to work with a certain alacrity and energy to get things done very quickly. What he can do through executive order, what he could do with the Congress, bringing it in their lives, and just puts it on the shelf like it's a trophy or a gold star. He's going to use that as a platform for good and undo some of these bad policies, and I think do even better. You know, these celebrities, these athletes, he's got job creators and innovators. He's got Elon Musk and Dana White. He's got people who make stuff, who people say, wow, there's an American success story, and he's going to bring them aboard.
So Vice President Harris has now encountered what is known as the Van Buren curse. It's the failure of the vice president to get to the presidency. Only two have done it, and that is Martin Van Buren in 1836 and George H.W. Bush in 1988. You know, the question is what the Republican Party looks like now. And Kayleigh, it's a multiracial party, to your point. It's working class, and maybe it's the future. I mean, it's Elon Musk. It is Joe Rogan and podcast. It is, you know, there's an opportunity here on both parties to realign and change.
There are going to be a lot of conversations that go on to that end. Who is the next standard bearer for President Trump? Is it J.D. Vance? Is he the one who picks up the torch after a 4-year legacy-defining term with the success that Kellyanne's describing? Is it J.D. Vance that picks it up? There's going to be a conversation about ground game. I mean, Kamala Harris over the weekend, they were saying they were knocking 1,000 doors a minute, and I have no reason to doubt that. It was an extraordinary ground game, but do ground games matter as much as podcast, as much as real, authentic, viral moments like President Trump on the garbage truck or, you know, President Trump at McDonald's, these viral moments that really captured the attention of the nation? And what does the Republican Party look like going forward? It's a broad coalition. It's an exciting coalition. And I think if President Trump manifests that working man agenda, no tax on tips, no, you know, limit on credit card interest rate, that's a working man's economic agenda. And if he makes that happen in 4 years, this party may look like this for quite some time.
You know, I'm struck when you're talking about the authenticity part of this, because when I think about him with the French fries at McDonald's and standing up with blood on his face, fight, 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 you can't fabricate, no, you know, consultant can create those moments, Trey. Those are organic and they are authentic. And I think that that is something that Kamala Harris fell really far short on in terms of the authenticity measure.
Yeah, if you had told me that a billionaire from New York would be able to connect with middle America, I would have questioned that. To my friend, the gentleman from Tennessee, autopsies are painful, especially when the patient's still alive. I wonder what the Democrat Party is going to go through in the next weeks and months, because this was a loss that I don't think anyone saw coming, not to this magnitude. So what does the autopsy look like if you're a Democrat? It's painful, but you have to have one. How did you lose, and how did you lose this soundly?
The easiest way to do it for them would be to simply say, if Joe Biden hadn't clung to the job, clung to the nomination, and hidden his condition with a lot of help, they could have had an open nominating process and gotten a more attractive nominee.
But I don't know that
who would
you
have been
can
freer,
pass.
who would have been freer to walk away from Biden policies and would have had a better shot. I mean, I think that's the easiest, simplest solution. But I'm not sure that's where they'll go. But that makes sense.
I don't think you can pass over an African American female, which is a very loyal constituency for the Democrat Party. I don't see how they could have passed over.
But if he'd left the office and she'd run, she would have been put through a different process and would have had competition, and the whole thing would have been different.
Against her.
You know?
Who would have
But I
run
mean,
against her?
but Harold, you have a Democratic Party that's pretty old. I mean, you have Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden.
You know, you got Andy Beshear, you got Josh Shapiro, you got Gretchen Whitmer.
That's a different kind of Democrat, and that is not the progressive Democrat that wins in a primary. So is it going to be a change in your party?
Well, we nominated Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, who were not from
the old days.
The party. So I think we'll do that. Look, tonight, what happened this evening and what's happened over the last year has been described. There were those on this panel who didn't believe that this resurrection could have occurred. So if this can happen, things are possible in politics if you're willing to change and willing to have courage and determination. And whatever Democrats or anybody want to say about this guy who's been elected our president, he personifies that courage and determination and persistence. So I think Trey, you were asking a serious question, and Britt gave a very serious answer. I think that's going to be part of the answer. And we've got to look long and hard about whether or not the way we campaign sometimes with identity politics at the end, is that the right way to do it? But before you get there, you got to get a purpose and a message. And we'll get there. We've got a long history of figuring these things out as a nation, as a party, and we'll figure it out this time.
So the Carnage speech got a lot of attention at the inauguration. Do we think that?
Oh yeah.
This speech.
I was going way back.
We're actually told that the teleprompters have been removed from the stage, so we could be in for a long haul here. We don't know. But what do you think? You know, he's coming, but there may not be teleprompters.
I'm saying he goes off the teleprompter anyway. But he, the other night at the Al Smith dinner, he was upset that there were teleprompters, because he doesn't want to use them. So.
Right. So Dana, what does this speech look like?
This one right now?
Yeah.
I think look, I don't know. He's one of the most unpredictable people, too. So I think that's why we're all here, and I'm wide awake, and I've been awake for almost 24 hours now. And I am curious to see. I think I wasn't just thinking about this speech. I'm thinking about the inauguration speech, which would be 8 years since Carnage speech. He has a wide range of the types of speeches that he can give. If you think even within a speech, there's range. If you think about the RNC convention, it started off with like, oh, wow, yeah. And then after a while, I was like, wow, he's still talking. And it was like so long, and it kind of got off script, and people thought, oh, he kind of lost an opportunity. But he didn't. I think if you look at these people who would take off work, drive somewhere in the middle of the night to go and get in line to wait for hours, to then stay at a rally for hours. And part of the things he has done as well is created this camaraderie amongst people so that you could go to a place where you're not afraid to wear your red MAGA hat, and you could say, I'm not the crazy one. I'm not the only one who thinks the way that I do. I can actually have friends. And that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be outreach to the other side. I believe in love thy neighbor. I love all of that. But he has created something special here. So I kind of want him to take a victory lap tonight. I don't think this is necessarily the moment for unity, especially when she won't even concede and give him the night to celebrate.
Kellyanne, you were looking at the popular vote. He's still up and could finish up.
And part of it is because he did run up the totals in places I was looking at, even the rural counties in Pennsylvania. He was going to win them by significant double digits, but he won them that much more. I think running up the totals in Florida, which was a swing state not that long ago, over 1.1 million votes or so. Kaylee, right, your home state. And this is, look, I think that when the Democrats take a look at this candidacy, it's not going to be, did she have too much time, not enough time? She's just a flawed candidate. She doesn't speak well. She doesn't work hard. I'm not being mean or partisan. I don't know why the country would have rewarded this candidate with the big job when she couldn't make the case what she does as vice president that affects our lives in a positive way. She was given that opportunity. I personally would like to thank the women of The View tonight for asking this question, for having her on. Oprah, we see you, and so on and so forth. People who thought they were doing her a favor because they made her something she's not. It's the opposite for Trump. They make him something he's not. Take that one word, take that one line, take that cherry pick this, that, the other. You never get the essence. I go back, does everybody remember 5 years ago, so Laurel and Yanny, or what color dress? You hear Laurel, I hear Yanny. You see a blue dress, I see a yellow dress. We were all looking at the same thing. That's the way Donald Trump is in this country. There are people who look exactly the same person, and they see two different vistas. I think it's time that we try to see one. Look, I don't know who said it earlier. I'm a little worried about the reaction of the Democrats and the Kamala people here. I'm very worried. I think that there are a lot of unhinged people across the political spectrum, and we gave very little quarter to how many anti-Kamala voters are out there. I don't want to hear the words racism and sexism. It's eyesight and hearing. We were listening and watching her. And I'm very worried that we've not talked a lot about how violent people may be and angry because she lost.
Right.
I'm afraid of that.
Right. I mean, I can just imagine thinking about The View, and a week or so ago, they were saying, what is wrong with someone who would vote for him?
Michelle Obama said it.
And Joe Scarborough saying, we weren't raised like this. Who raised these people? So I can only imagine what tomorrow is going to look like.
Yeah. I will say when we talk about The View, what comes to mind is we mentioned the carnage speech that President Trump gave at his inauguration. And my mind automatically went to the unity speech that Biden gave. And he mentioned unity a half dozen times. But when you think about what we got over 4 years, there was the garbage comment that didn't come in isolation. There were all kinds of comments. Neanderthal was one of the first words he used to describe those who opposed his COVID edicts. The Mark Cuban comment, he was an official surrogate of the Kamala campaign. And for, as mean as some of President Donald Trump's tweets have been and people have problems with it, one thing I've challenged Democrats to find is one example of him disparaging the country, half of the country, and that's something he has not done. And so I expect you'll hear a unifying tone, and I expect you're going to see a very successful presidency and one untethered maybe from some of the things that were holding him back. What comes to mind is an Oval Office meeting that we had where Dr. Fauci was urging him not to open the country. And I watched President Trump fight vociferously, saying people are losing their jobs. We must open the country. He wanted to do it sooner than he did. I think that Donald Trump, who goes with his instincts, is going to be a Trump that ultimately leads a very successful country in second term.
Martha, Joe Biden mentioned the word unity more in his inaugural address than any president, I think, except one. If he's serious about that, he'll pardon Donald Trump. He'll also pardon his son. And then he'll put pressure on Georgia and New York to end this lawfare. If there is any silver lining tonight, it is that lawfare actually helps the person that you are trying to go after. We need a justice system. The lady needs to wear a blindfold for a reason. We got to stop this prosecution of our political enemies.
I mean, literally, his polls went up.
Will be the Attorney General.
Absolutely.
We need a really solid Attorney General.
John Ratcliffe.
You can do it.
Sorry, John. Sorry, John. I apologize. Sorry.
There will be a lot of talk about cabinet members, Treasury Secretary, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense. You've got Tom Cotton, Mike Pompeo. You have.
Well, you also have a Republican bench. And sometimes, like you were saying, that the Democratic Party is quite old right now. There's not a great bench, although there are some, and especially, but when you take governors out of states, then you leave a hole. and then you have to build up that bench back up. But the Republican bench is pretty strong right now.
There you see Doug Burgum and Vivek Ramaswamy, Steve Wynn and his lovely wife Andrea. So people are there waiting for the former president. Britt would like to know where he is.
He's watching us.
Can we say tonight, though, Harold, that the melting pot still works? That Hispanics, Black Americans, working class Americans, standing up, asking what their government is going to do, asking their government to see them and their concerns, that it works, that this is American democracy in our republic working.
The process works. I think as we get a final account of the numbers and the coalition that President Trump won with this time, I think it'll be one that will be for the history books. President Bush, I think, got 40+% of the Hispanic vote. George Bush, W. Bush, and it looks like President, at least the preliminary numbers suggest that. But as much as we talk about the unconventional aspect of this was conventional also. People believed him. He resonated with voters. He resonated with communities, rural communities, urban communities, suburban communities across the country. And I congratulate him tonight. I didn't want him to win, but I congratulate him on his victory and wish him the best for my country. And I can only hope that the concerns that are articulated by my dear friend Kellyanne, that they're not realized. I hope that my party and my friends, and for that matter, Republicans alike, that we're all able, once we get past the moment here, the 24 hours of excitement and joy and celebration, to understand that what we're really celebrating is the greatest experiment to have ever come to existence. It'll celebrate 250 years of its own existence in 2026. So those are my thoughts, Brett.
I'm struck by the issue of abortion, because it was talked about so much, and it was presented as if, you're a woman and you are not going to support her, then you hate all women. They said that husbands, were hateful towards their wives and the women in their lives if they didn't support this candidate. And I think it just goes to show that kind of, manipulating, it doesn't win
and
people
narrowcasting us based on our gender. I think Kamala Harris was talking to us from the waist down, and I think Donald Trump was talking to us from the waist up as well. That's where my eyes, my ears, my heart, my brain, and my big mouth are. So, I mean, you got to talk to the woman in full. It's as if she doesn't know anything about the economy, or she doesn't care about what's going on in Ukraine or Israel or with Iran, or can't do the math on her grocery bill. It's an insult. Of course people care, but we care about many things. Just as we are not monolithic in life, we're not monolithic thinkers politically. But Martha, something else happened. They put these ballot initiatives on to try to gin up turnout.
That's right. They
for
did.
the Democrat. And they did that, and it kind of backfired. Look at this popular vote, and it backfired. The other thing is, if you've got 10 abortion ballot initiatives, you can vote your conscience on abortion, and you can vote separately or similarly for president.
Yeah, we're seeing
the presidential race was not a proxy for your position on abortion. By the way, somebody sent me the statistics. Over $500 million spent on ads about abortion. $500 million in this country out of the $16 billion Brett is talking about. $37 million for pro-lifers. The rest was the pro-choicers. I mean, it's just insane amount of money.
So we've spent a lot of time talking about markets tonight and with the betting markets. Trey, at this point, it's at about 66% that Republicans hold on to the House as they're ticking down the possibilities, and they look at these coattails with not only the popular vote, but what could be and is shaping up to be an electoral college landslide. Should he control the White House, the Senate, and the House, like he did at the beginning of 2016, the possibilities open to a lot of things.
Yeah, I was there in 2016, and we had everything but an agenda. That mistake will not be made this time. He will deal with the border. He will deal with tax is coming up. There is a plan being formulated by Mike Johnson right now, and John Thune or John Cornyn or whoever becomes the majority leader. The mistakes of 2016.
Standing by.
Where's Bill?
There's Newt Gingrich and Callista Gingrich waiting there.
Where's Bill Hammer?
There's Mike Waltz. and his wife there, all expected to be a big part, perhaps, in a second administration. You know, the former president had hats made with 45-47.
He's been wearing
this
his
campaign.
for a while, yeah.
He's been wearing it for a while. Now it is true. Harold Ford?
He will win the popular vote. He's likely going to win the electoral vote. The Dow has jumped 800 points in futures this evening. They give you some excitement around, to give you a sense of the excitement that investors have. And again, I think this speech tonight, the tone tonight, I'm just to be repetitive, because I hope the president's watching. And like you said, Kayleigh, he may be watching us here and there. I hope it's what you said. I hope this is a moment to let the country, because we've had.
This is what happens when the machine comes after you. What you've seen over the last several years, this is what it looks like. Couldn't stop him. He keeps going forward. He doesn't quit. He's the most resilient, hard-working man I've ever met in my life. His family are incredible people. This is karma, ladies and gentlemen. He deserves this. They deserve it as a family. I want to thank some people real quick. I want to thank the Nelk boys, Aiden Ross, Theo Vaughn, Bussin' with the Boys, and last but not least, the mighty and powerful Joe Rogan. And thank you, America. Thank you. Have a good night.
That is a piece of work. No, he's really an amazing guy. But most of all, I want to thank the millions of hardworking Americans across the nation who have always been the heart and soul of this really great movement. We've been through so much together, and today you showed up in record numbers to deliver a victory like probably like no other. This was something special, and we're gonna pay you back. We're gonna do the best job. We're gonna turn it around. It's got to be turned around. It's got to be turned around fast, and we're gonna turn it around. We're gonna do it in every way, with so many ways, but we're gonna do it in every way. This will forever be remembered as the day the American people regained control of their country. So I just want to say that on behalf of this great group of people, these are hard-working people. These are fantastic people, and we can add a few names like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He came
something and to respond to all of this, but no phone call, as we can tell right now. We're going to wrap up with our panel: Harold Ford Jr., Katie Pavlich, Mark Thiessen, Kellyanne Conway, Kayleigh McEnany, and Trey Gowdy. It's almost 3 a.m. Just come on. You're fine. Harold, final thoughts.
I'll be brief. The next few days, I think, are really, really important for the country, for Democrats, for the leadership in my party to reach out to the president-elect. I thought this speech tonight was the right tone. You said he might give this kind of speech, Kayleigh, and I was pleased that he did. It's 3 o'clock in the morning in the East Coast. He gave a speech like it was 9 o'clock in the evening. He's got great energy. Congratulations again to him, and I believe what he said and want him to act on it.
One person who was not there for this celebration tonight was Corey Comparatore, who was killed at that July 13th Butler rally. So God bless his soul. I'm sure he'll be happy with the results tonight. The United States of America turns 250 years old in 2 years, and Donald Trump is going to be in the White House, and I think he will probably throw a pretty good party for America.
A heck of a birthday party for America.
Mark, we don't know how big this is going to be. There may be more coattails with Senate races yet to call.
Yeah.
He won Texas by 15%. He won it by 6% in 2020. We're going to see some big numbers, and he could win the popular vote.
Yeah, it's a landslide, and it's getting landslidier as the evening goes on. Having written presidential speeches, the thing that jumped out at me is that most of these speeches begin with, "I just received a call from my opponent, who graciously conceded the election, and I thanked her and I congratulated her on a well-fought campaign." Has Kamala Harris not called him?
We don't have any indication.
And by the way, why is she not speaking tonight? She lost. She just go to bed? I mean, you know, Wisconsin's called. It's over. Why is she not coming out and conceding? It's the most. It's shameful.
The whole thing was that he was going to say he won when he didn't really win, or not concede if he lost.
Right. Yeah.
And now here we are.
President Trump took a victory lap, well-deserved. This is a huge political comeback. It's looking like a landslide. We'll see if that amount. He could have won every single swing state, by the way. We will see. The most important line, this will be remembered as the day the American people regained control of their country. What a line. Donald Trump did that tonight.
Right.
Conciliatory, magnanimous. It's not a political comeback to me. It's a political resurrection. I don't think anybody saw this. My only advice to him, hire people that are not going to write books for your cabinet. Do not make the same mistakes you made with the first term. Don't hire people that are going to go get a book advance to trash you later on.
Kellyanne.
Hating Trump has become a cottage industry, very lucrative, makes some people famous. I think that's going to go away now, by and large. Some people will still be the only gear that they have, but I don't know that America's going to abide it. This is a country filled with need, and that need has deepened and it has worsened in these last 4 years. And those are big jobs in the White House and the administration. I think we're going to find a lot of great men and women who want to step up and serve, who are willing to make that sacrifice of money, privacy, safety perhaps, God forbid, time, scrutiny, because they know that this man is going to work with the same kind of energy and enthusiasm, and I'm going to say the word again, alacrity and urgency, that you saw in these rallies, this nonstop punishing schedule. Donald Trump showed up to the American people, stood up and showed up for them, and then today they stood up and showed up for him.
Well, I want to say a couple of things. One is this journey has been absolutely amazing. From covering this race from the beginning, think about all the things that happened, all of the bumps along the road, the debate June 27th, a candidate that gets 2 assassination attempts, a new nominee, all that we followed. It's been a joy covering it with you, but we have so many people at Fox behind the scenes that put all of this on, that make all of this happen. And there's just a cast of thousands. So thank you to, there we go.
There we
a little
go.
wave of the control room.
Very nice. We have an amazing team of people, super supportive group, fantastic leadership here at Fox, and we're grateful to all of you who made this happen. Last Saturday, we had a rehearsal. There was 100 people in this room, so we're grateful to them for making it look easy out here, and I'm grateful to you. It has always been a joy to be by your side on these journeys, and thank you all at home for standing with us and for sharing this incredible election process with us.
You know, Bill Hemmer is off the board currently, but
He'll be back very soon.
I think he's going to be back in just a few hours, but he did tremendous work going through all of those numbers. We didn't actually think we were going to have a call tonight. We thought that this might extend just when we first got our poll numbers, the Fox News voter analysis. But the fact that this is all coming to an end, trust us, the commercials will come to an end. The text messages will come to an end. But there's going to be a lot of digesting what happened tonight, which was history. This was history. And don't forget where you were tonight.
I think a lot of the American people I spoke with said, I just want there to be a decisive outcome. And I think that is a gift to the country. And I hope that we can all wake up in the morning and be and move forward with our great country.
Thank you for joining us for Democracy 24 election night coverage. Trace Gallagher picks it up from here.
Good night, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.